excited you guys are all here. So I really appreciate you coming. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacy Lynch Newberg, and I'm one of the math teachers here. We've got some new faces here, so I like it. Please keep coming back to the MAC to get some help, right, on math as we go into finals. All right, well today, Clamencia is going to be here and talking about why you need to know math, right? Everybody's like, why do I have to do this? Well, a lot of careers, a lot of hobbies, everyday life includes math, and so she's here to highlight how math can be useful for you, okay? So she's our outdoor instructor here on campus, so hopefully you guys have had a class from her. Fishing's coming up.
Hike, camp, and fish.
Hike, camp, and fish.
Beginner backpacking,
okay.
Which goes out on Friday.
Do you have any room in either class? Are you starting?
We have one spot left in fly fishing, I believe.
Okay. So, all right. So if you guys are looking for a stress buster, right? Take a break from math.
I already got a stress buster.
Yeah? Okay. Well, thank you, Clamencia, for presenting. We saved the best for last.
Thank you. So, my name is Clamencia. I have a master's in environmental education, and I have an undergraduate in kinesiology and outdoor rec. And then I'm also a wilderness EMT, and that's probably more my pride and joy than my other degrees. And I'm really glad that the outdoor program sits in the math and science department because both of those are really relative. So I'm going to show you some fun slides of places I have been and incorporate some education in here. So we're going to talk a little bit about sailing and navigation, which is really the two things that got me into the outdoors were caving and sailing. We're going to talk about calculating miles per hour when it comes to hiking. And then with that, calculating elevation gain and loss. We're going to talk a little bit about rock climbing anchors and carabiners. And what is in front of you is a rock climbing carabiner, and we'll talk about that. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on avalanche slopes and aspects and how that matters to your ski career or your future ski career if you don't ski right now. And if you stay to the end, I will show you, or we can send you the link to GoPro's award-winning avalanche berry recovery, which is a really cool video to see. We're going to talk about cubic feet per second in river modality, and we're going to talk about food. Save the best for last. Food is the best. Grams per ounce. And then we'll kind of evaluate all the food on the table except the fish and teddy bears and figure out which one from a ounces standpoint is the best to take outdoors, not from a taste standpoint. And that's important to realize. So when I was 22, I had the opportunity to deliver a boat from Tahiti to Australia. I actually had to look up where Tahiti was on a map. I bought a plane ticket, but I had no clue where it was. And what I didn't know at the time is that open ocean sailing is super easy, and you can make tons of mistakes because there's nothing to hit. Okay, so this is a 39-foot Corbin. It's a sloop. We were on it for about 3 months. Our longest passage was 10 days. And after that 10-day journey, I actually got really land sick. So getting on flat ground that didn't move was the opposite. Oh yeah, that is possible. Okay, this is an area that I've also sailed. This is Vietnam. This is Halong Bay. This is not a place to learn to sail because there is plenty to hit. Okay, and so with this, like when I got into sailing, I sailed at a summer camp, and it was just in a little boat, and you flip the boat over. I didn't realize there was tides and currents out in the ocean, and so navigators or sailors don't use maps. We use charts, and everything is focused on water instead of land. So this is how you're going to end up using math, and it's you're constantly calculating. So much that there's some things you kind of throw out the door when it comes to math because you're like, everything changes constantly. So for an example, we're going to assume that our compass is accurate, which is not always true on a sailboat. There's a lot of metal. We're also going to assume that tidal pull is the same in every area, and it isn't. Nowadays, you can go to the internet or an app and you can get that data, but before that, you'd have to look it up in books. And so if this slide on the left, if the little like circle at the top was your boat and your goal is to navigate down to here, you need to pick a compass bearing. The problem is the pull of the boat is going to pull in a direction. And so if your boat didn't go anywhere and you had a tidal pull of 1.2 miles in the direction of 83 degrees true north, again, we're assuming that true north is what we're using. We have magnetic north and true north. If you're super interested in that, take a navigation class in the spring. You'll learn a lot about declination. So you basically plot a little line here, and then this is if the boat was to go nowhere and do nothing, your boat would pull this way. Now we want to travel. So now our sailboat needs to go at that angle. And so our new angle is in red, and that is our direction of travel. And so you put your bearing on your sailboat, you set your compass, and now you're hoping that the tide doesn't fluctuate or flip and start pulling you the other direction. And you're also hoping that the wind stays the same. When I was in the South Pacific, we rotated every 4 hours for shifts on the boat. And you got to like take the chart out, plot a little dot on like the chart table below. So I had plotted, my chart little data at noon, and someone was doing a plot data a little early. And 3 hours later, we were in the exact same spot we were 3 hours ago. You couldn't tell, but we had gone in a complete circle because we had changed sails, and our pull was the same. There's also a portion of the currents that nothing occurs, which is the doldrums. And we didn't do anything except sit and bob in the ocean. When you first start learning to sail, this is how a boat works with angles to be fast or slow. And so I did do a little bit of sail racing. And so the idea here is if this was your sailboat, as you bring it closer to the wind direction, your angle decreases and your speed increases. So the fastest point of sail is what's called close hauled. And if you were trying to get somewhere really efficient, you would sail at a close hauled. And that means like perfect trim on your sails, and you can only go in that direction. So if you wanted to go in the direction of the wind, which is a lot of times where you want to go, and in racing, that's the first leg of the sailboat race, you go from close haul to close haul, and you tack, which is switching your sail sides back and forth. It feels exhilarating. It makes like racing fun because you're jumping back and forth with your weight. Except you're not actually increasing your distance towards your destination efficiently. The faster way to sail is to turn the boat around and to go in the direction of wind. But that doesn't feel very fast because all the wind is pushing you. And typically you're being pushed with the current and you're being pushed with the wind. And so if you sail from the US to Hawaii, you are actually in the perfect current to never move your sail because the wind will always be behind you traditionally. And it's the most boring sail in the world, even though your destination is cool, because you just watch the sail and be like, okay, we're still floating and being pushed. And then all of these other angles, you have to trim your sails to make the perfect angle to get your boat to be most efficient. When I did race, like this was pretty exhilarating. So your windward mark, you basically tack from close haul to close haul back and forth. And one of the problems is that if that wind shifts before you get to that windward buoy, you then get pushed off track. The only race I've ever won sailing is the race that was on the place that I learned to sail. And so it was Sebago Lake, Maine, and I had grown up sailing there a lot, and I knew the wind patterns. And so everyone else was going for the windward buoy, and they were going like this, and they're like, oh, we're gonna make it. And I could see in the water that a shift of wind was coming, and they basically got pushed really far down, and I went way over here and tacked over and went around. And so sometimes you can plan for something, but you can't predict how it's going to end up because of the last minute shift of wind. And then you can't go into the direction of wind. So that's how, if you were wanting to stop travel in your boat, you orient your sails in a specific way and you face the wind, and that's how you can repair a boat or stop.
How could you see the wind shift in the water? Is it ripples in the water?
Yeah, it's the ripples in the water behind like flat or clear spots, and they get darker and lighter. And so if you sail the same place over and over again, you almost can see the color change. But for someone who's maybe not from that area, they might not notice the slight shift. And if there's barriers like islands, there's sometimes traditional patterns for like afternoon wind. The wind will shift direction based on heat or landmass, like temperature. And so you kind of almost predict or anticipate. Like in sporting events, like you often have your home court advantage. In sailing races, you have your home water advantage.
So it's basically the home court advantage for sporting events.
Always. These are the currents that are typical around the world. And this is why, like when you do a transatlantic crossing, you go up into the Gulf Stream. And I was on a boat delivering from Florida where we lost all engine power, we lost all wind. And if we hadn't been able to get a tow from a tow company, we would have been literally pulled out to Portugal. So that is the one map we did have on the boat, or chart we had on the boat. But sometimes, like in the outdoors, you don't really get a choice.
What if it's storming?
So most people will still sail during storms. They'll do what's called reefing the sails. And so your area of sail, they'll reduce it to really small, or you'll balance the boat with a front sail and a back sail and pull down the middle sail. When you're open ocean sailing, you're rolling 24 hours a day nonstop, and then you're rotating shifts. Typically, the captain doesn't get a shift. That's the beauty of being the captain, because it's their job in any emergency or unknownness for them to get up. And so sometimes the captain might be up for like 16 hours straight because there's you're in a shipping lane, and there's cargo boats going by. And in where I was adrift in the Atlantic, we actually had right of way because we were a disabled vessel. And so we sat on our radio, and every hour and a half hour radioed out saying we're a disabled vessel. We have right of way. I'm sorry if you're surveying the ocean or having cargo that's really heavy, like we can't move. And so similar to like rules of the road here, like we drive on the right side, like in any type of boating, there's rules, and when you're broken and all your power is by sail, you have right of way, which doesn't make everyone happy.
Basically, what happens when your car breaks down and you're on the side of the road?
Yeah, and then with a sailing vessel, our engine was not working. We had water in our engine, so we couldn't fix that, and there was no wind. Great questions. This is a better picture of the boat that I sailed across the South Pacific. And the name of it is the Rum Punch. Okay, we're switching into a colder climate. This is avalanches. So on a mountainside, I'd like you to guess what angle slope would be the most ideal for an avalanche to occur. 14? Okay, what else? 9. So you would be in a zone of safety if you chose those areas, which is great, being conservative.
Steepest possible angle?
Okay, so those are the polar opposites, and those are the safest two places to be. So it's the middle range that we're nervous about. And so both of you are going to do well in the outdoors, but anything over 60 degree slope is you're really not concerned about avalanches. It's called sloughing. It comes off. Anything lower than 25, there's just not enough momentum. So when I first came out to Wyoming and lived in Du Bois, I used to ski Togety Pass by myself, but I would ski at like 17 degrees. I think I could like dodge the avalanche pretty well, but it still got me outdoors. Our fear is this 38 to 40, and so this is an easier way to look at it. You need an inclinometer, which most compasses nowadays have a little vector underneath it, and it allows you to get the slope angle. The problem with getting a slope angle is that it's always changing on a mountain. So you might measure at one place, but then you ski a little to the left and that angle's different. So 38's the magic number, but typically 30 to 45 is kind of your concerned area. I'm not going to talk a ton about density, but like last week's snowfall, this is your snowfall. If it was a low density layer, that light snow, the next day it gets really warm out, and then that density, that top layer stiffens and warms and gets harder. So if you really want to do like an analytical snowpack study, you would measure the density of all the layers. And a snow pit is like you go outdoors and you just dig this really big hole and you stand in the bottom of it and you touch all the snow. And that crystally snow that sometimes you get that's like makes noise like and it falls apart, that is snow that is very unstable. And so in the avalanche world, there's like 5 or 6 tests you can do to analyze your snowpack. Like everything, angle matters, snowpack matters, and if you're from somewhere locally, you can look at a snowpack and you can probably date it by each weather event. And so I looked today for the avalanche rating and condition for Rock Springs, it's 0. Okay? But up in Jackson Hole, they haven't had a lot of new snow lately. And so looking at all of that, it's like if you're a local, you have a home court advantage, again, of knowing all the weather that has occurred. And if you're like, oh, you remember that day in February it was really sunny? You might look at your layers and be like, that's this ice layer. So avalanche is its own like cup of tea, and the best advice is if you ever go into the backcountry is like take an avalanche specific course because safety is paramount. This is what everyone should know if you go skiing in the backcountry. So this is an avalanche compass rose. For each area of snow, you can look it up. So this is a hypothetical one so that you can see what it looks like. And so you need to have a compass with you to know which direction or which angle, like where's north, south, east, and west, because right now, all of this is safe. This would be your worst slope, and they rate it as like avalanche trigger possible, you know, like, or probable, and then most avalanches, about 90% are human triggered. And so the lighter the color, the better. So greens and yellows, you're pretty safe. It's hard to see in this diagram, but this is also done on topography, so it has an elevation line. And so this is a higher elevation on the northeast side. So if I knew nothing about avalanches and I checked the avalanche report, I could easily make a decision being like, cool, I don't understand avalanches, but if I stay in the south, southwest at a lower elevation, then I should be safe. Where I shouldn't go is to a higher elevation or to the north, northeast, or even east side. And so this is something that they've tried to color code. It's universal in the US, and I believe internationally, because they want people to be safe in the backcountry. So in college, there's probably very few things that are timed in life. In avalanches, timing is the one thing that matters. So for avalanche burial, this is a chart I always show folks that go outdoors, is if you get buried in an avalanche, the 15-minute marker is the threshold for you to do a self-rescue. And again, with avalanche courses, you get that training and that practice. But if you're asphyxiation or hypothermia takes longer to set in, and the goal in rescue is to get your partner or your partners out of snow and a clear airway after 15 minutes. So training, rescue, and practice are really important. And also with this, it's nice to know is like self-rescue is the most valuable, not calling out for help. This is a little bit of avalanche beacons. They're devices you wear around yourself at your base layer, like your, and you cover up so they don't get ripped off you. So if you get buried, the reason I put this slide in is because they have these vector lines. And so you do a little grid pattern to get close. And the goal is to get as close as possible to the person before you have to find them. And your beacon has a number and a direction. The problem is that you're following a curve. And so here's your beacon, here's your person, and this is assuming that they're buried perfectly like this. They're not on top of their beacon or angled or in a funny direction. And so when you come in, like you might have done this search, and this is like, hey, this is where it is. And it's gonna send you all the way around the vector line to it this way. It's not gonna send you on the direct path. And that's because of the way the device works. They're universal worldwide, and technology changes every 3+ years. So all the beacons I have, they are considered useless, and I use them for practice burials. So I'll put them in a Tupperware container. You know, you can bury it in your house, you can bury it in the grocery store in the fruit section, and then your goal is to find it. But what happens is that you follow this line of vector and you don't get to the patient in the most direct manner, but it's the curve you're following. It's like two kidney beans sending out their information. Okay, cubic feet per second. We're gonna switch talking about whitewater. And we're gonna show these videos at the end, but a cubic foot is depth times width times height, and 1 cubic foot is 1 basketball. So when you go to a river, you can look up the CFS for the day. And this is a picture of Cataract Canyon at low water being 5,000 CFS. And there's other rivers that low water is like 80 CFS. So every river is different. This is a western wide water. And then this is the same river, same area, at 100,000 CFS. And this is a double flip. And if there's one thing you ever know about whitewater, it is that the strongest angle for going through a rapid is 90 degrees. And so when you go through training, they just say, if when in doubt, if you don't know what to do, tee up to it and push as hard as possible. And this, they end up sideways and they dump, and then they right themselves up. This is probably the thing I use the most. So this is Nasmyth's rule of distance and time calculation for hiking. It is designed in Europe, probably a little bit faster hikers. So this is his actual equation, and this is the modified one that I use all the time. So for every 2 miles of hiking, I budget an hour. And then for every 1,000 feet up, I budget an extra hour. And every 2,000 down, I budget an extra hour. To run you through an example, this is part of the Appalachian Trail. It's about an 8-mile section, which will take 4 hours, 3,600 feet of gain, about 3.5 up, and about a half hour down. So you're looking at 8 hours to do 8 miles. The Appalachian Trail is in the east. It's about 2,180 miles. By the time you finish hiking it, you've done an extra 96 miles because of the vertical ups and downs. And so for some people, that's really hard to kind of comprehend that there's more extra, but they're just like the vertical gain and loss. This is a trip in Italy that I've done, and this is like a whole trail kind of panned out. And that's what the trail looks like in real life. This is the Alta Via. It's beautiful. If you ever want to go, let me know. We can go.
Where's your trail?
Do you want to go? You're going to take
The trail, I'm on the trail. That's the problem. Okay. We're going to skip down to this one because this is the most applicable and the easiest to understand. And so this is when building top rope anchors for climbing. that the smaller the angle, the less force is on it. And so if I could get two people to come up out of their seats. One more. Thank you. So holding on there. If you two were anchors to build any type of top rope system for climbing or like something for rescue, if I'm the middle and I pull, you're supposed to let me pull. So you both kind of move because you are across from each other. Okay. There's a 100% pull on either side of this. The closer you get, so now there and there, perfect. Like as I pull, it gets harder. And so in climbing, now get super close. Yeah, perfect. So this is like the best angle. Sweet, thank you. And so with this, sometimes you don't get an option, and so you just need to know, like, hey, this is not ideal. And then sometimes, like, you can get the smaller the angle, the better. Anything above 90 is considered poor. If you look at your carabiner that I've given you, there is numbers on it. And a carabiner has a spine, and the spine is the flat portion. So it's designed to pull like this. And someone tell me how many kilonewtons their carabiner can have pulled on it. And kilonewtons is a KN. Okay. So there's a secret symbol like thing, which if you don't know how to read it, it might be challenging, but this should match it, which is if there's an open gate, it's going to be lower. So on this one, it has a directional angle like this, and mine says 24. So closed and pulling on the spine, I have 24 kilonewtons, which is above 4,500 pounds of force. Just by opening it, I reduce that to 7 kilonewtons. And if I cross load it, which is this way, it is also reducing it by more than half. So every kind of piece of outdoor gear like this, which is like a technical piece of gear, has a rating to help people, and a kilonewton is 225 pounds. And so climbing has a lot of perceived risk, but an actual risk, like this is a pretty safe item. Even without, some of you have lockers, some of you don't, even without locking it, it often doesn't change the force pulled. Can I borrow yours? I'm supposed to go in front of the owl. Okay, this one is a wire gate, and we'll see if it does it. So old school wire gates didn't have this little nose, and if you hit it, they would bounce. And the company that made this figured out that if they added a little bit of a clip, this metal piece doesn't move. And so technology in climbing is changing all the time. The difference between this and this, not a lot when it comes to strength. It's more of convenience and weight. Backpacking, we have two topics left here. People get excited about figuring out how much their backpack weighs. And that's an art, and with that, sometimes the gear is the gear you have. So I like to focus on food, because I love food. And so this is calories per ounce. So here, this is a friend's chart of all the food he takes backpacking. I have a granola bar, a Cliff bar, a Bobo bar, nuts, kind of another type of bar, and a strudel waffle. So which one do you think is the best snack for weight?
Spare ribs.
Spare ribs is not on the table, but that would be a good choice. A lot of fat in there.
The Cliff Bar?
Okay, so you're going to say the Cliff bar?
Yeah.
What's the lowest?
What were the other ones?
Strudel waffle.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. So this morning I put these through the calculator, and it's actually this.
The nuts.
So this is the snack pack, which has 18 grams and has 100 calories, and its calorie per gram is 5.5. A friend of mine will not take any food in the backcountry if it's not in the 4 or 5 range, which means a lot of these snacks, although enjoyable, are not valuable for their weight. So it's a pretty simple spreadsheet to set up, but it sometimes gets your ideas of like, I always think this is a good choice. It's totally not. It's 2.0. And I didn't know that for a long time, and I love them. You can still choose to bring them. You just need to know the default. Cave survey is kind of the last topic. Basic mapping. This is compass, a measuring tape, and an inclinometer. So an inclinometer is a pretty valuable tool. This is usually what you do in the field for research, and this is what it looks like. One of my first jobs I got because I did a couple weeks as a volunteer researcher in a cave system, doing stuff like this. This is Lechuguilla. This is like my dream one day to go to this cave. It's on the top tier. And that is math in the outdoors.
Where is that cave you were talking about? Yeah,
It's Lechuguilla. It's not a public cave. It's a private cave in New Mexico in the Guadalupe Mountains. It gets written up in National Geographic a lot. And if folks want, I think Eric's done recording, I will show you the difference between low CFF and high CFF. Yeah. So this is mild.